Visiting Mexico, Canadian government urges high caution. High levels of criminal activity and kidnapping. The Canadian government issued an alarming travel advisory for the upcoming spring break. Today on Around the Globe, we are looking into why this happened, including the 6 reasons why visitors should exercise caution when traveling to numerous regions in Mexico. Be sure to stay until the end of the video because we are going to uncover the precise 13 Mexican states listed within the Canadian Travel Advisory and explain how to get a chance to win a $50 Amazon gift card by watching, liking, and commenting on this video. So what's the explanation behind the travel advisory? In the wake of the January arrest of Ovidio Guzman Lopez, the son of infamous drug cartel leader Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, has heightened the level of concern. While it's important to stay vigilant when traveling in any foreign country, the advisory is meant to alert Canadians to the potential dangers of traveling to Mexico and to encourage them to exercise caution, particularly in regions known for narco-traffic and other criminal activity. Here are the 6 reasons why visitors should take extra precaution to ensure safety. Drug trafficking. Drug trafficking in Mexico remains a major problem, with drug cartels continuing to dominate the trade of illicit drugs like cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. The violence and corruption related to narco-traffic still pose a serious challenge to Mexican authorities, with thousands of individuals being killed or disappearing as a result of cartel-related violence. In recent years, the Mexican government has taken steps to combat drug trafficking, including increased cooperation with international partners and therefore the deployment of military personnel to areas suffering from cartel violence. However, the matter remains deeply ingrained and may likely require sustained efforts over several years to address effectively. Extortion. There is a legitimate concern about the likelihood of tourists being extorted in Mexico, especially in regions where organized crime is widespread. Criminal organizations, including drug cartels, might aim at tourists trying to extort them. The tourists could also be subjected to extortion efforts, which could involve demands for money in exchange for protection or to avoid being harmed. Tourists can also be in danger of being extorted by corrupt enforcement officials, who may use their position to demand bribes or threaten legal proceedings for fabricated offenses. To prevent extortion, tourists should be vigilant and avoid displaying signs of wealth, such as expensive jewelry or cameras, in public. It's also advisable to avoid traveling alone, particularly at night, and to stay in reputable hotels or accommodations with good security measures. Additionally, tourists should familiarize themselves with the local laws and customs and be prepared to report any suspicious activity to the local authorities. Kidnapping. Kidnapping of tourists to extort money from their families or to use them as bargaining chips in disputes with authorities has also been prevalent. For example, in 2019, when a group of 14 tourists from the US, Canada, and Mexico were abducted while traveling through the state of Guerrero. The tourists were traveling in a convoy of vehicles when they were stopped by a group of armed men who forced them out of their vehicles and kidnapped them. The kidnappers demanded a ransom of $4 million for release of the tourists. The case received widespread media attention, and after several days of negotiations, the Mexican government was able to secure release of the tourists and were returned safely to their families. Human trafficking. The threat of human trafficking to tourists in Mexico is a serious concern. Criminal organizations involved in the exploitation of vulnerable individuals, including women and children, have been apparent. Tourists can also be at risk of being targeted by human traffickers, particularly in areas where prostitution and other forms of sexual exploitation are prevalent. Back in 2019, a group of young women from Colombia was lured to Cancun under false pretenses and forced into prostitution. The women had been promised jobs in the hospitality industry but were instead forced to work in brothels in the city. The women were subjected to physical and psychological abuse. After several weeks of captivity, the women were able to alert authorities, who conducted a raid on the brothel and arrested several individuals involved in the trafficking ring. Robbery and theft. The threat of theft to tourists in Mexico is a common concern, with petty crimes such as pickpocketing, theft of personal belongings, and robbery occurring in many tourist areas throughout the country. For instance, in 2018, a group of tourists from the United States had their belongings stolen while visiting the ruins of Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula. The tourists had left their backpacks unattended while exploring the ruins, and upon returning, discovered that their bags had been stolen. The stolen items included cash, passports, credit cards, and other personal belongings, causing significant inconvenience and financial hardship for the tourists. While local authorities were able to recover some of the stolen items, the incident highlights the importance of being vigilant and taking steps to protect personal belongings while traveling in Mexico. To reduce the risk of theft while traveling in Mexico, tourists should avoid carrying large amounts of cash or valuables and keep their belongings close and in sight at all times. It is also advisable to use lockable bags and luggage and to avoid leaving personal belongings unattended in public areas. Street crimes. Street crimes against tourists in Mexico are unfortunately quite common, particularly in high-traffic tourist areas. These crimes can range from pickpocketing and bag snatching to more violent crimes such as armed robbery. One example of street crime against tourists in Mexico occurred in 2020 when a group of tourists was robbed at gunpoint while walking near their hotel in the popular tourist destination of Playa del Carmen. The tourists were approached by a group of individuals who brandished firearms and demanded their valuables, including cash, phones, and cameras. Although no one was injured in the incident, the robbery highlights the need for tourists to exercise caution and be aware of their surroundings, particularly when traveling in unfamiliar areas. Tourists should be aware of the common tactics used by street criminals, such as distractions or creating a sense of urgency to lower a tourist's guard. By remaining vigilant and taking precautions to protect themselves and their belongings, tourists can reduce the risk of becoming a victim of street crime in Mexico. Even though you have to be careful when visiting Mexico, there are beautiful places, incredible food, and so much culture to learn from. Got Mexican travel stories to tell? Drop it in the comments below to win a $50 Amazon gift card per YouTube video. Make sure you're subscribed and like the video. Mexican states. As mentioned at the start of the video, these are the 13 Mexican states where non-essential travel must be avoided due to high levels of violence and organized crime. All Chihuahua. All Colima except the city of Manzanillo. All Coahuila except the southern part of the state at and below the Saltillo-Teroyan Highway corridor. All Durango except Durango City. All Guerrero except the cities of Ixtapa, Zihuatanejo, and Taxco. In Guanajuato, all Michoacan except the city of Morelia. In Morelos. In Nayarit, all Nuevo León except the city of Monterrey. All Sinaloa except the city of Mazatlan. All Sonora except the cities of Hermosillo and Guamos, San Carlos, and Puerto Peñasco. All Tamaulipas. All Zacatecas. There you have it. It's important to remember that because of the high crime levels in Mexico due to drug trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, human trafficking, robbery and theft, and street crimes, tourists are advised to exercise caution when traveling to the country. As the spring break is approaching, the Canadian government recommends that anyone thinking of visiting Mexico should look closely at the travel advisories issued by Canadian officials. Travelers must remain cautious and vigilant at all times, keep an eye on local media, and comply with the instructions of the local authorities. The advisory acknowledges the potential risks and advises Canadian citizens to exercise due diligence to ensure their safety and security. So to anyone with travel plans to Mexico, especially this spring break, be safe. Be aware of the potential risks and take precautions. Remember to keep an eye on your surroundings, avoid carrying too many valuables, and stay away from any suspicious activity. Stay safe out there and have a great trip.